right, welcome back to Pints and Punditry at the Pitchside Pub. This is our taproom treble feature where I hop on a live stream and normally I discuss, 2, 3, 4 topics, usually my top 3 topics of the day. But today there's just one thing I want to talk about, and I heard this, I got to give credit to where this came from. I heard this on the morning show on Sirius XM radio this morning. If you're in the States, it's probably the best morning show there is. I don't know if there's a lot of competition for that, but certainly a very good radio show on XM radio, which is the only all-soccer channel I know here in the States. And Jack Collins and Charlie Stiltano were talking about all the upcoming Champions League matches today, and they were talking about Real Madrid, and it really is an interesting topic that I wanted to discuss because we're going into the second leg, and they're playing Atletico Madrid. They're up a goal, but they are going to Atletico Madrid, right? So still a lot of work to be done for Real Madrid, and the question was posed, what happens with Brahim Diaz, who started in the first leg, scored the go-ahead and ultimately winning goal for Real Madrid, and does he get back in the lineup today, which is one of those questions that only really comes up at the biggest of the big clubs, because only at the biggest of the big clubs, only at a club like Real Madrid and a few others, would he not be an automatic regular starter, because he's such a good, talented young player who's just this little magician who can do all these little things in tight spaces, and that goal was phenomenal. And it would be a given. He would be in the lineup, routinely every game anyway, but certainly after scoring that goal, he would be, but it's not a given because of the return of Jude Bellingham. So I want to break down some of the different possibilities that Carlo Ancelotti has in front of him today to see what they might go with. And a lot of it is dictated by the situation, the fact that they are up a goal and we're in a second leg. And I'm going to do this with the help of James Alcott's tactics board. And if you follow any sort of YouTube content, you know who James is. Certainly if you know who I am, you know who James is, because he's considerably bigger and better at this and more important in this world than I am. But he has allowed a number of us to demo his tactics board. You're used to seeing it in that bright green. He's allowed us to change the colors, which I love because now I can make it fit into the rest of my channel. And he's allowing us to demo it for a week or so, and I wanted to put it to use here. So big shout out to James. Thank you for him. I'll get his link in the description of the video once we're done being live here, but huge shout out to James for allowing us to borrow this. So I want to use this to sort of demo what the possibilities are here for Real Madrid. And you see here, this is what they went. I didn't make this up. This is their starting lineup from the first leg. There was no Jude Bellingham. He was suspended. Not the suspension that cost him a couple games in La Liga for abusing the official, but this was from picking up too many yellow cards in Champions League play. So he was not available for the first round, which is the only reason probably Brahim Diaz was in the starting lineup in the first place. It also is part of why Carlo Ancelotti went with a 4-4-2. Now, he has broke out this 4-4-2, somewhat regularly throughout the season. It's not, I wouldn't say his go-to formation, but there are definitely teams he uses it against, and he matched up against Atletico's 4-4-2, and so obviously they got a 2-1 victory, and it worked. But I wouldn't say it's his standard formation. His standard formation is more of a 4-3-3 or a 4-2-3-1, which, if you've watched my channel, you know I am of the opinion that they are the exact same formation. It's really just a matter of what you do with them. So I'm going to assume that's what's going to come back out, and you could see, well, I guess he would, with Rodrigo in there, he would go here, and you could see something like that. That's essentially a 4-2-3-1, right? When you see it on the pregame lineup, it's lined up like that, but that's no different than a 4-3-3. All you do is slide them up, you slide them up, and all of a sudden it's a 4-3-3, and that's really how it plays out. They're the same exact formation. The only difference is really how much this defensive midfielder gets forward, and if he plays as more of an 8 than a 6, right? Do both of these guys play as 6s, or does he play as a true 8, right? And do we classify these guys as wings or sort of attacking midfielders in that central role? Well, when it's Vinny Jr. and Rodrigo, you're damn sure they're wings, right? So it's essentially a 4-3-3, and you can line it up like this, you can line it up like this, however you want to do it, it's the same damn formation. So the question is Brahim Diaz going to be a part of this starting lineup? And there are a lot of factors that go into it. We can assume that Jude Bellingham is returning and will be a part of this lineup. I think that's relatively safe to say, if for no other reason than just to show support for the superstar after his La Liga suspension, even though I know this is a Champions League game. He's been suspended twice on 2 different occasions recently. Perhaps you could use some public support to say, hey, he's still our guy. We love him. Also, one of the top 5 players in the world. So, there's that. So we can almost assure that he will be back in this lineup. So what does that do for Diaz? Well, the obvious swap is just to go there, right? And we have some sort of version of this. And you've got a 4-3-3, call it a 4-2-3-1, call it whatever you want. Now, this is where the score and the fact that they are already up a goal comes into play. If this was a brand new even game, okay, I would say possibly you don't go with 2 defensive-minded midfielders, right? These guys are basically both 6s. They're not nearly as involved in the offense as a Bellingham, as a Diaz. So you could eliminate one of those and replace, possibly have Bellingham drop back. Now, I'm not suggesting he become a holding midfielder, but he plays as more of an 8, and Diaz stays in as more of a 10, and you play a more traditional 4-3-3 like that, right? So that would be a real possibility. But they're up a goal. So do they want up a goal and on the road, by the way? So do they want to take a more defensive-minded approach and keep both holding midfielders, both defensive-minded midfielders in the game? That is a possibility, right? And if that's the case, I think it cost Brahim Diaz his start because Bellingham's coming back in. We have seen Diaz start on the right wing, but I don't think they're going to take Rodrigo out at this point. And one of the points that was made by Charlie and Jack on the morning show I was listening to was that having a guy like Diaz come in the 60th, 70th minute if they need a goal is such a weapon to have. Now, you could argue that the same could be argued of Rodrigo or Bellingham or any of these guys that aren't going to start. If they pull them off the bench with fresh legs, in need of a goal, that is an incredible weapon to have. And Real Madrid happens to have a lot of those because you could also oops, that's not what I meant to do. Still learning this tactics board. You could also bring Luka Modric in for one of these guys. And that, obviously, he's a bigger goal-scoring threat, even though he can play in that pivot role as well as anybody, even at his age. In short stints, he's still as good as anybody, but he does contribute offensively as well. So he could be the one that gets a little more forward and do that. So you've got a lot of weapons coming off the bench. Or, and this is the other way to look at it, and this is why managers matter. This is why Carlo Ancelotti is one of the best managers in the world, and he's got to make this decision, and no one else can make it for him. Would you rather have, in the same vein of bringing in fresh legs to have the offensive attack in need of a goal, would you rather be able to bring in fresh defensive legs? So you start with something like this, right? Maybe try to poach that early goal, and you're playing in more of this traditional 4-3-3, okay? Something like this. And you play 60 minutes like this. Maybe you keep it 2-1. Maybe you get that third goal because you've got this ridiculous attacking front here, and this is certainly able to get a goal even against Atletico Madrid on the road. It's certainly possible. And then whether you're up 1 or 2 at that point, that's when you say, okay, now I need the defense. And you bring in the fresh legs, and Diaz comes off, and Camavinga comes on, and maybe Rodrigo comes off, and Bellingham slides out to the wing, and Modric comes on, and now you've got some defensive support. Maybe now you drop back into a 4-4-2, something like that, and try to protect that lead. So the subs are going to matter here is really the key point. I think regardless of what happens, you're going to see Diaz and Modric coming off the bench here. I think Rodrigo starts, but I don't think it could do something like this if you wanted to go in a 4-4-2. Again, how it's written on the team sheet and looks on our little apps before the game doesn't matter as much as what actually happens on the pitch. Even if it's lined up like this, you're still going to see him, Vinny Jr. out wide, Mbappe through the middle, Rodrigo getting up this way, Bellingham's still going to funnel in this center spot. It ends up being the same damn formation. Anyway, same tactics. It doesn't change no matter how they want to line it up on the opening sheet. None of that really matters. Do I expect Real Madrid to sit back in this game? Maybe a little bit more than usual, but not dramatically, not like what they did to beat Manchester City last year, where they just said, hey, we've got that lead, and now we're going to pack this box and just make you fire shot after shot from all around here, none of which are going to go in, and we'll just outlast you. I'm not expecting that sort of sit-down tactic, at least not until, the 60th, 70th minute, maybe around the time the subs come in. But I wouldn't be shocked if they sit a little bit deeper, so you may see it listed like this, but it's the same formation. I think we're going to see something like this, 4-3-3, Bellingham. The question mark here is, do they want to go with this sort of formation? Okay, again, 4-3-3, 4-2-3-1, same damn thing. Do they want to go with something like this, or and then keep Modric and Diaz available on the bench in case you need that spark late, right? So that's the one possibility. Or do you sacrifice one of these guys? You probably keep Tchouaméni in, and then you bring Diaz in for him. Bellingham sits a little deeper, and Diaz goes there. Those are the two options for me. So it's not, I don't think in any way, Diaz over Bellingham. I think it's more of a question of Diaz over one of the two pivots, right? Do you go for the extra offense, or do you go for one of the two pivots there? And either way, both are going to happen. I think that's the key here. Both scenarios are going to happen. At some point, one of these guys is going to come off, possibly for Brahim Diaz, or it could start that way. The only way that doesn't happen is if they start with the defensive formation, right? The defensive personnel. You start with this, which is a real possibility. They get their goal anyway, right? They score the goal anyway, even though they really only have 4 attacking players instead of 5 now. This is 5 defenders and 4 attackers, right? So that's a lot different. You got 5, boom, and you've got 4, boom, all right? As opposed to if you do Diaz in here, I would say now you've got 5 attackers and 4 defenders. Personally, I think with a lead on the road, I'd go the other way around. I'd go with the defenders in, but if you want those defenders to have fresh legs late, I would understand that, and I would not argue with Carlo Ancelotti at that point. The only real safety net then you've got is Luka Modric coming in to provide some defensive support. So I'd be, you could have some issues late. Also, another factor, Atletico Madrid is incredibly good at scoring late goals. So that might be enough to make him say, okay, let's see if we can't get that goal early, and then we'll bring in Camavinga and Modric for fresh defensive legs at the 60th, 70th minute mark, something like that, and then we can sit deep in that 4-4-2. So I think that's probably what happens. I realize I'm going back and forth and contradicting myself a little bit because I'm interested to see how this plays out, and it could go a lot of different ways. Maybe the goal from last game earns Brahim Diaz that extra spot, but I certainly would not be surprised to see Camavinga and Tchouaméni both in the starting lineup as that pivot with the 4 guys up front, and then try to hold on to that lead as best they can. What do you think? I would love to get your thoughts in the comments. If you're watching this after the fact, get down in the comments section. We'll see how it plays out. And what Carlo Ancelotti does. I won't second guess him either way unless he does something really wacky. But I do think that's he's got some options there, and that's why managers get paid the big bucks, right? So get down in that comment section. Let me know what you think. I'll be tweeting about this game as it's happening as well. This is the one I'm going to watch this afternoon, so you can follow me on Twitter or Blue Sky at Pitchside Pub. Make sure you hit the subscribe button down below. Follow the channel. We do these live streams a couple times a week in addition to a little more polished, edited videos that come out. Big thanks to James Alcott for the tactics board. I hope that was a nice touch that you guys liked. I think it really helps illustrate what I'm trying to talk about here. So hopefully that was something that everybody liked seeing. And big thanks to James for letting us demo that. Hopefully that's something we can do a little bit longer term. And make sure if you don't, by some chance, subscribe to him. Why you'd be watching my videos if you haven't subscribed to James is beyond me, but make sure you check him out as well. Thanks, as always, for joining us here on Pints and Punditry at the Pitchside Pub. Enjoy that Champions League football, everybody. Thank you.